It begins quietly the moment you stop showing emotions, not because you've lost them, but because you've learned how dangerous they can be in a world that doesn't know what to do with them. The face hardens, the voice steadies, and the storm moves inward. Beneath the practiced calm, something vast begins to stir, a silence that is not peace but exile. And this is where Jung's truth first breathes. What you repress does not disappear. It waits. You used to cry more easily once. Anger used to flare without shame. Joy too would spill out in unguarded laughter. But one by one, those expressions were deemed too much, too intense, too strange, too inconvenient. So you built the mask, the persona. It fit well enough at first. Smooth, acceptable, admired. Yet behind it, your real face began to fade. That's the tragedy of the persona. It doesn't just protect you from others. It slowly walls you off from yourself. Now emotions come like ghosts. They knock softly at night, a tension in your chest, a dream you can't explain, a sudden ache when someone looks away too quickly. They are the exiles of the heart returning to remind you what you've buried. Jung would say this is the shadow calling everything you've disowned, everything you refuse to feel. Not evil, just unloved. And when you stop showing emotions, you give that shadow more room to grow. Imagine it. You walk through your day like an actor who's forgotten they're in a play. The smile feels practiced, the conversation's rehearsed. You notice yourself from the outside curating reactions for an invisible audience. You nod at the right moments, say the safe things. But deep down, something whispers none of this feels real anymore. That's the cost of emotional restraint. When you silence feeling, you don't become stronger, you become divided. One part performs life. The other drifts beneath it, like a submerged continent. And sooner or later, the tectonic plates of your psyche begin to shift. Dreams start to tremble. Restlessness grows. The unconscious wants balance always. It will not let you live as half a person forever. You begin to notice small cracks. A sudden irritation at something trivial. Tears that come without reason. A longing you can't name. These are messages, not malfunctions. Your unconscious is trying to speak through the only language it has left: symptom, tension, dream. Jung once wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The invitation is not to destroy the mask, but to look behind it gently, courageously. Because when you stop showing emotions, you also stop relating. Connection is built through feeling, not performance. Without it, love becomes fragile. Friendship becomes duty. You're there, but not really. People feel your absence, even when you're in the room. They sense that something in you has gone silent, not broken, just far away. And yet this silence carries potential. There's a strange alchemy hidden in restraint. By turning inward, by sitting inside the quiet, you begin to sense the depths you've ignored. You start to realize your emotions are not enemies, they are maps. Each one points toward an unhealed story, a forgotten self. The anger that rises when you're ignored may reveal the child who never felt heard. The sadness that lingers after success may expose the hollowness of chasing validation. Every emotion, if followed, leads somewhere sacred. But the journey back is not easy. The first thing you meet when you return to your feelings is resistance, a subtle terror that if you open the door, you'll drown. The unconscious doesn't speak gently. It speaks in floods. And yet the more you resist, the more pressure builds. Jung described this as the tension of opposites, the conflict between who you appear to be and who you actually are. Individuation, the process of becoming whole, begins when you allow that tension to exist without running from it. So you sit with it. You begin to listen. In time, you notice that emotions are not chaos, they are currents. They move through you, not against you. You start to see the shadow not as a monster, but as a messenger. The anger you feared contains courage. The sadness you hid carries depth. Even your numbness has something to say. It's not emptiness, but protection, an exhausted kind of love trying to keep you safe. And as you begin to feel again, the world shifts. Colors return. Music stirs something familiar. The body long muted begins to hum with recognition. You realize how deeply you've missed yourself. Emotion was never weakness. It was the pulse of being alive. You see now that showing emotion was never about being dramatic, it was about being real. But reality, as Jung knew, is never tidy. To feel fully means to risk breaking the image you've built. The persona may crack. People may not understand. You may not understand. That's the price of authenticity. It dissolves control. Yet what emerges in its place is something infinitely more powerful: truth. and truth once tasted refuses to be forgotten. You begin to live differently after that first crack in the mask. The air tastes heavier, more honest. You notice how much energy it took to hold everything in the constant tension of containment, the hidden exhaustion behind composure. When you stop showing emotions, you discover how deeply you were performing safety. And when you finally allow yourself to feel again, the body shakes like something ancient waking up. It starts in small moments. The tremor in your hands when someone asks how you're doing and you almost answer honestly. The tears that rise during a song you used to skip. The quiet relief of not pretending to be fine. These moments are the first signs of life returning. They are not regressions, they are resurrections. Jung believed that within every feeling you suppress lies a fragment of your soul. He called it the rejected other, the parts of us that didn't fit the story we were told to live. When you stop showing emotions, these fragments drift into the unconscious like lost children. But when you begin to listen again, they return shy, hesitant, carrying the raw beauty of everything you tried to forget. You begin to sense them in dreams. A recurring figure in the dark. A house with too many rooms. Water that keeps rising. The unconscious speaks in images, not words each dream. An invitation to descend. You might not understand them, but you feel their pull like gravity drawing you back to yourself. The descent is frightening at first. To go down is to surrender control, to enter the labyrinth of the psyche. But the deeper you go, the more light you begin to find, not the blinding light of certainty, but the dim, holy glow of awareness. You realize now the shadow is not trying to destroy you, it's trying to complete you. The anger you feared holds your boundaries. The grief you avoided hides your tenderness. Even envy carries longing, a reminder of who you still wish to become. Every emotion you repressed was never an enemy, only a teacher speaking a language you forgot how to hear. You see this in others too. The friend who always smiles, haunted by the fear of being unloved if they stop. The stoic father whose silence hides decades of unshed tears. The partner who turns conflict into logic because emotion feels too dangerous. We are all mirrors for one another's disowned selves. When you start to see that compassion begins to replace judgment, you understand that everyone is fighting to be whole, some through control, others through collapse. It's strange how love changes in this new light. When you stop hiding your emotions, relationships stop being performances of harmony and become laboratories of truth. You begin to see how much of love is projection, how we cast our unlived lives onto others, demanding they carry what we refuse to hold. Jung called this the dance of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine seeking reunion through another person. You meet someone and call it destiny, but it's really your unconscious recognizing itself in disguise. The heartbreak comes not when they fail you, but when you realize they were never yours to begin with. They were your mirror. This realization hurts, but it liberates you. You start to see love not as fusion, but as reflection, two souls, witnessing one another's unfolding. You no longer seek someone to complete you, but someone with whom you can safely fall apart. To love becomes to see the other as a portal into your own unconscious, and to let them see you the same way. Vulnerability stops being a risk. It becomes a ritual. And yet even as you awaken, the world keeps tempting you back into numbness. Society rewards the mask, not the soul. It loves your productivity, not your poetry. It tells you to manage emotions, not meet them. The danger is subtle. You can start performing authenticity, turning self-awareness into another persona. That's when you must pause and ask, am I feeling this or am I narrating it? Real emotion is uncurated. It burns through language. It humbles you. It makes you human again. You begin to understand what Jung meant when he said that the goal of life is not happiness but wholeness. Happiness is fleeting. Wholeness is holy. It includes sorrow, rage, longing, confusion, all stitched together into the strange tapestry of being alive. When you stop showing emotions, you flatten that tapestry into grayscale. When you let them move through you, the colors return vibrant, imperfect, alive. The process doesn't end with awakening. In fact, it's only beginning. The shadow doesn't vanish when seen. It transforms. It becomes creativity, insight, empathy. The energy you once spent suppressing emotions becomes the energy to live fully. You begin to channel what once consumed you, turning pain into expression, loneliness into depth, silence into art. And somewhere within that transformation, you feel the first pulse of the self, the center Jung described as the archetype of wholeness, the divine pattern behind your chaos. It doesn't speak in words, only presence. It feels like standing in your own gravity after years of drifting. You stop needing to prove or perform. You simply are. And in that being, emotion flows naturally not as storms but as rivers returning to their source. You stand there between shadow and light and realize every emotion you feared was guiding you home. Somewhere in the middle of the night, between wakefulness and dream, you feel the quiet presence of something vast and nameless. The self, as Jung called it, the organizing principle of your entire being. It is not the ego's voice nor the shadows. It is older, deeper, the axis upon which your whole life turns. When you stop showing emotions, you lose the bridge to this center. But when you begin to feel again, even in confusion or pain, the bridge reforms. Slowly, the pieces of you start to speak to one another again. You start to realize that emotions were never the enemy of reason. They were the soil from which reason grew. Every insight you've ever had was born from an emotional spark: curiosity, awe, grief, love. Without that pulse, thought becomes sterile, mechanical. You see it now in the world around you, how people mistake calm for strength, numbness for wisdom, but the wise are never untouched. They are simply unafraid of being touched deeply. There's a quiet revolution in admitting what you feel. It breaks the spell of perfection. The persona cracks not through defeat but through truth. And truth has a sound. It's the breath you take when you finally stop pretending. That breath is your first act of freedom. You notice how emotions move differently now. They don't drag you as they once did. They visit, teach, and pass through. The anger still comes, but it burns cleanly. Sadness arrives, but it doesn't consume. Even joy feels steadier, deeper, less like a spark and more like a sunrise. You begin to sense what Jung meant when he said that emotion is the chief source of consciousness. It's not there to control you. It's there to wake you. You start to meet your own unconscious in the world, not as an idea, but as an experience. The stranger on the street who evokes inexplicable tenderness. The co-worker who irritates you beyond reason. The old photograph that makes you weep. Projection, you realize, is the psyche's way of showing you what you still need to reclaim. Every person you love or hate is a piece of your own story wearing someone else's face. The moment you see that clearly, relationships stop being prisons and become mirrors. And mirrors are sacred things. They show what is not what should be. As this insight deepens, so does your compassion. You understand now that others hide their emotions for the same reasons you did: survival, belonging, fear of rejection. You no longer crave their perfection, you crave their truth. When someone lets you see their real pain, you no longer look away, you listen. And in that listening, both of you heal a little. This is how the unconscious speaks between souls, through the shared language of emotion. Then one day you stand in front of a mirror, not a metaphorical one this time, a real one. You study your reflection. The face is familiar but new, softer somehow. The eyes carry both light and shadow. You realize that the person looking back is not the one you were trying to become, but the one who has been waiting all along. Individuation is not self-improvement, it's self-remembrance. You have not become someone else, you have come home. Still, the work continues. The unconscious does not end where understanding begins. It breathes with you, dreams with you, suffers and heals with you. Every day you must descend and return, balance and rebalance. Life will still bruise you, but now you understand the bruises as messages. Every wound whispers how it wants to heal. Every descent carries an ascent within it. You stop fearing the dark because you've seen what it hides, the luminous seed of transformation. In quiet moments you catch yourself smiling for no reason. Not the social smile, but the one that rises from stillness. You realize that peace is not the absence of emotion, but the harmony of it, the full symphony playing, none of it muted. The laughter and the grief, the courage and the doubt, all part of the same song. To feel deeply is to live truthfully. To live truthfully is to become whole. So when you stop showing emotions, everything changes. Not because you become less human, but because you drift further from the center of your being. And when you start to feel again, everything changes once more. Because you remember that life was never meant to be endured. It was meant to be experienced. And if you listen closely, you can still hear it, the faint hum beneath everything. The self, steady and timeless, whispering through every emotion: you are not broken. You are becoming.
You've been wondering if this is it. If all the quiet, the disconnection, the strange longings that pull you away from your old life mean you're lost or found. You wake up with a sense of distance from everything you used to chase. Conversations feel hollow. Goals once burning with urgency now seem foreign. There's an ache that doesn't point to any one thing, just a knowing that something must change. The world continues to turn, but you've stopped spinning with it. This isn't just exhaustion or apathy. It's not depression. It's the silent language of the soul. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg for attention like the ego. It simply withdraws, quietly, subtly. It begins to erase the outlines of a life that no longer fits. And though you may feel like you're falling apart, you are in truth being pulled together, just not in the way you expected. Because when you choose the soul, you don't ascend in light. You descend into depth. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he also warned that becoming is not elegant. It is not staged or beautiful or clean. It is not what you post on social media or tell your friends about over drinks. It is what happens in solitude, in silence, in the raw, trembling places inside you that have never seen the light. When your old life begins to dissolve and you find yourself staring into the void, this isn't failure. This is the gate. The first sign that you've made the right choice is discomfort. Real, unshakable discomfort. It shows up not to punish, but to provoke. The job, the relationships, the dreams, they feel foreign now, not because something broke, but because something woke. And what woke cannot be put back to sleep. There's a hollowing that occurs, a pulling away from noise, a deep longing for something that doesn't yet have a name. You stop craving recognition. You stop needing validation. You stop clinging to who you were, even though you don't know who you're becoming. This is not regression. This is sacred collapse. Jung called this enantiodromia, the tendency of all things to turn into their opposite. If you've spent years chasing what the world told you to want, the soul will respond by taking it away. Not to harm, but to heal. The world outside begins to fade because the world inside is stirring. And it doesn't happen with clarity. It happens with ache. And that ache is not proof you've lost your way. It's the compass you didn't know you needed. You'll begin to feel it, a subtle pull, a quiet resistance to the roles you once played. The achiever, the helper, the strong one, the charming one. Those identities will begin to feel like costumes on a stage you no longer want to perform on. You'll find yourself unable to pretend. Small talk becomes unbearable. Superficiality suffocates. You withdraw, not because you're broken, but because you're finally listening. The ego clings to structure, but the soul lives in the space beyond it. So when the plans fall apart, when the goals fade, when you wake up with no map, this is your invitation. To stop building the life you were told to want, and begin allowing the one that wants you. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel clear. But clarity is not the soul's native tongue. The soul speaks in dreams, in symbols, in synchronicities. It speaks in that conversation you overheard that felt meant for you. In the book that fell open to the exact page you needed. In the moment of stillness where your breath caught and something deep inside whispered, "This is it." And that's the second sign, that inexplicable knowing. The pull that doesn't explain itself. The inner compass that turns you away from everything familiar and towards something unseen. You start saying no to what you used to chase. You stop explaining yourself. You start craving solitude like oxygen. The people around you may not understand. They may question you. They may grow distant. Let them. Your evolution is not meant to be understood by the version of them that knew the older version of you. And you are shedding. Not because you're losing, because you're returning. You're coming home to yourself. And coming home doesn't look like triumph. It looks like silence. Like detachment, like letting go of things you thought you couldn't live without, only to discover you were never really living with them, just surviving. You stop reaching for what once saved you and start trusting what now stirs you. This is not the absence of direction. This is the emergence of a deeper one. You begin to notice that the world no longer reflects your inner life. That's the third sign. The outer world feels muted, flat. The conversations don't touch you. The noise doesn't move you. You are present, but not available. Not because you're cold or distant, but because you are tuning into a frequency most have forgotten. You feel unseen, not because you're invisible, but because the world has never truly seen this version of you. And that's okay. Jung taught us that the outer life must often collapse for the inner self to emerge. The ego needs mirrors. The soul needs silence. When the mirrors break and the applause fades, the soul speaks. This in-between is unbearable for many. It is the cocoon between identities, no longer who you were, not yet who you're becoming. And that's where the fourth sign emerges: guidance without logic. A knowing that doesn't come from the mind, but from the marrow. You find yourself doing things without reason, lighting candles, walking in nature, sitting in silence for no purpose other than to feel. You start noticing your dreams more. You journal not to fix but to witness. You stop pushing, stop striving. You begin surrendering to a wisdom that doesn't live in books or strategies. It lives in you. And it's been waiting patiently for the noise to die down. The more you follow this inner pull, the less you need permission. You stop asking others what they think. You stop explaining your choices. You stop needing consensuses to feel confident. This is individuation, the sacred process Jung spoke of, where the ego persona and shadow are integrated into a unified self. Not a perfect self, a whole one, a real one. The fifth sign is the grief that comes with this shedding, because every part of you that falls away was once loved, once useful, once true. You grieve not because it was false, but because it is finished, and that grief is holy. Let it wash through you. Don't rush it. Don't shame it. It is not a detour. It is the path itself. The ache, the silence, the questions, they are not distractions from your purpose. They are the doorway into it. You are not unraveling because you're weak. You are unraveling because you're wise. Because something inside you knew this moment would come. And though your mind doesn't understand, your soul remembers. You are being stripped of what cannot follow you. And though it feels like death, it is the beginning of a deeper life. One built not on performance but presence. Not on applause but alignment. This is the sacred undoing. The disintegration before integration, the falling apart before falling into place. You will feel a strange kind of loneliness here, not because you are truly alone, but because the old noise has gone silent. You've stopped chasing, stopped pretending, stopped reaching for the things that once gave you meaning but no longer offer nourishment. And what remains is space. Empty, terrifying, beautiful space. That's the sixth sign, the sacred solitude that follows the unraveling. At first it may feel like abandonment, like loss. People disappear. Conversations dry up. The invitations stop coming. But what if this isn't isolation? What if it's insulation? A divine protection wrapped around your becoming. Carl Jung often said that the soul rarely moves in straight lines. It speaks through paradox, contradiction, the tension of opposites. And this silence you're experiencing is not the absence of life. It's the ground where true life begins to germinate. You are no longer being distracted. You are being initiated. When the world no longer echoes your inner depth, you are being asked to deepen further, not upward into visibility, but downward into truth. This solitude is not a punishment, it's a purification, and what it strips from you is not love or purpose, it's noise, it's distortion, it's everything that kept you from hearing your own voice. You will sit with yourself in ways you never have before. You'll watch your mind grasp for certainty, for direction, for some signal that you're not wasting your time. And you'll have to meet that part of you, the one that fears stillness, the one that needs results, the one that equates productivity with worth. You'll have to look into its eyes and say, "You're safe now. You don't need to perform anymore. You're allowed to rest." That's when you'll notice the beginning of something else. Not a loud answer, not a miracle, just a shift. A new current inside you, subtle and slow. The soul moves like water, not fire. It doesn't burn its way through. It softens, melts, reshapes. And in the silence of this new space, it begins to whisper the truths you've always known but were too loud to hear. You'll start to feel strange things like peace in the middle of uncertainty, like joy without a reason, like love without an object. That is the soul reclaiming its place. You'll find yourself crying at beauty, at truth, at the smallest flickers of presence. A bird's song, a line in a book, the way sunlight filters through a curtain. These aren't meaningless moments. They're signs, echoes of the psyche, proof that something inside you has come alive. You're beginning to feel again, not through the ego's lens, but through the soul's skin. That's the seventh sign: aliveness. Not the kind that comes from excitement or novelty, the kind that hums beneath the surface of your being. Steady, quiet, real. You'll notice synchronicities, moments that defy logic but resonate deeply. A stranger says the exact thing you needed to hear. A memory arises right before you make a decision. You dream of someone you haven't seen in years, and the next day they reach out. These are not coincidences. Jung called them synchronicities, the soul's way of communicating with the world through symbols, not syllables. When the outer begins to reflect the inner in subtle, sacred ways, it's because you've begun to align. The soul does not speak through schedules or spreadsheets. It speaks through the invisible threads that connect all things. And when you follow its whisper, life becomes less about control and more about communion. You stop needing to force. You stop needing to fix. You begin to live from a place of deep trust, not because life got easier, but because you became softer. Because you no longer fight what is. You learn to bend, to break, to be reborn. You understand now that the discomfort was not a mistake. It was the call. The grief was not weakness. It was the gateway. The solitude was not emptiness. It was sacred ground. You have made the right choice, not because it feels good all the time, but because it is true. And truth does not flatter. It frees. It strips away what cannot stay. It breaks what was never real. It wounds only to heal. The deeper you go, the less you need answers. You stop seeking conclusions. You start trusting the questions. You begin to realize that healing is not fixing who you were, it's remembering who you are. Beneath the persona, beneath the roles, beneath the armor you were once called personality, there is something wild, whole, and holy. That is the self. And the journey to it is not paved with certainty. It's walked in darkness, in silence, in courage. You don't become who you truly are by adding more. You become by shedding everything false, everything forced, everything that was never yours to carry. This is the return, the descent before the rise, the unbecoming that leads to the only becoming that matters. So, if you're here in this strange in-between, unsure, aching longing, keep going. If you feel detached from the life you once knew, disoriented by the space that now surrounds you, keep going. If your conversations no longer touch your soul, if the world feels muted, if your dreams are louder than your plans, keep going. This is not the wrong path. This is the one less traveled. The one that doesn't shout but sings. The one that doesn't impress but transforms. The one that doesn't lead you to applause but to peace. And you'll know. Not through proof, not through logic, but through resonance. Something inside you will hum, will soften, will rise, and you'll know. This is it. This is the path. The choice you made to leave the noise, to question the scripts, to listen to the ache, was the doorway. And what lies beyond it is not a new version of your old life. It's a new kind of being. One that doesn't need fixing or improving. Just remembering, just presence, just truth. The soul doesn't need you to become anything. It only needs you to stop pretending. And if you're hearing this now and something in you is echoing back, not with words but with tears, with stillness, with the strange peace that says yes, then you've made the right choice. Keep going. The path you're on doesn't offer guarantees. It doesn't come with signposts or approval from the world. But it offers something far more enduring: truth. And truth is not always comfortable. Often it's what strips you of what was never real to begin with. The soul doesn't negotiate with the ego, it dismantles it with grace, sometimes with fire. So if you find yourself trembling, doubting, questioning the ground beneath your feet, breathe. You are not lost. You are in the process of being found not by the world, but by your own inner depths. This is what Jung called the journey toward individuation, the sacred return to the self, the original blueprint of your wholeness. And no one else can walk it for you. You begin to realize that everything you thought you had to become was a mask. The good girl, the strong man, The achiever, the pleaser, the healer, all of it scaffolding around a soul too expansive to be contained by roles. And now, as those masks begin to slip, you feel the cold air of truth against your bare skin. Vulnerable, exposed, alive. At first, this bareness may feel like a loss, but slowly you see it for what it is. Liberation, because you were never meant to live your life in costumes. You were meant to live it in communion with your essence, and that essence doesn't need an identity. It needs integrity. There will be days when you feel like collapsing, when the silence is too loud, when the stillness feels like stagnation. But if you sit in it long enough, if you resist the urge to fill the void, something extraordinary begins to emerge. Not a solution, not a plan, a presence, a sacred awareness of something timeless living inside you. The more you listen, the less you crave noise. You stop chasing highs and start honoring harmony. You stop needing to prove your worth and start remembering you never lost it. That shift from performance to presence is irreversible. It's the moment when the soul takes the lead and the ego learns to bow. You'll notice your attention change. What once captivated you now repels. What once felt exciting now feels draining. Your nervous system no longer tolerates falseness. You become exquisitely sensitive, not fragile, but finely tuned. Your inner world becomes rich layered, full of symbols and signs. You find yourself more curious than certain, more patient than proud, more willing to be wrong if it means being real. That's the quiet power of alignment. It doesn't shout. It doesn't sparkle. It roots. It anchors. It lets you feel the weight of your being without the weight of expectation. And then something else happens. You begin to attract differently. People experiences opportunities. They come not in response to who you were, but to who you're becoming. You no longer draw in those who match your wounds. You begin drawing in those who match your healing. This isn't magic. It's magnetism. It's the soul's natural resonance when unblocked by falsehood. And you'll know it's real because it won't need to be chased. It will feel like recognition, not pursuit. Like coming home, not running away. That shift alone is evidence you've made the right choice to follow the ache, to honor the unraveling, to trust the unseen. Even your relationship with time changes. You stop rushing, you stop waiting. You live in a deeper now, a moment where past and future collapse and only the breath remains. You realize that most of life isn't happening out there. It's happening in the way you meet this moment, in the way you respond to what is, rather than react from what was. Jung called this awareness the emergence of the self, the integration of conscious and unconscious into wholeness. Not perfection, wholeness, which means including your shadows, your wounds, your contradictions, not fixing them but facing them. This kind of transformation is invisible to most. It will not get you applause. It will not be obvious from the outside, but it will be undeniable on the inside. You'll feel it in the way you breathe, in the way you forgive, in the way you no longer betray yourself to be loved. You'll feel it in your choices, quieter, truer, less dramatic. You'll stop abandoning yourself for comfort. You'll stop bargaining for belonging. You'll stop editing your truth to make others feel safe. Not because you've become cruel, but because you've become clear. And that clarity is love, not the romantic kind, but the soulful kind that says, I will not abandon myself even if you do. There is a weightlessness that comes with alignment. Not because life becomes easy, but because you are no longer dragging the corpse of who you were supposed to be. You walk with what is real. You let go of the need to fix everyone, save everything, carry the world. And in doing so, you finally make space to carry yourself, to hold your own gaze, to be the one you needed. This isn't selfishness. It's self-respect. The soul does not thrive in martyrdom. It thrives in authenticity. And every time you choose what is true over what is comfortable, you move closer to the life that was always meant for you. You'll still stumble. You'll still doubt. There will be moments when you question everything, but those moments are not regressions. They are recalibrations. The soul doesn't demand perfection. It only asks for presence. So be present with your ache, with your joy, with your confusion, with your clarity, because all of it is sacred. All of it is part of the map, and the more you trust this unfolding, the more you'll begin to see there is no wrong path. There is only the path that leads you back to yourself. So if your life has grown quiet, if your desires no longer make sense, if your days feel like floating between two worlds, don't panic. Don't run back to the burning building of your former life just because it feels familiar. Stay here, in the stillness, in the soft ache of transformation, in the holy discomfort of becoming. You are not late. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are becoming. Slowly, quietly, unstoppably. Keep going. What begins as silence becomes sanctuary. What begins as confusion becomes clarity, not the kind built on facts and formulas, but the kind carved out of fire and surrender. You no longer demand that the world mirrors your evolution. You simply accept that your path is your own and not everyone can walk it with you. This is perhaps the hardest part, the aloneness of authenticity. When you choose to live from the self instead of the persona, you risk being misunderstood, misread, misplaced. But the alternative is a life of slow erosion, of becoming so adapted that you forget what you truly are. That price is too high now. You've already paid it with years of pleasing, proving, performing. And now, your soul is done waiting. You've crossed the threshold. You no longer belong to who you were. And while you may not yet see who you're becoming, you've started to feel her. In the spaces between thoughts, in the choices that feel lighter, in the moments you say no and something deep within exhales. You are being shaped by something older than logic, the unconscious intelligence that Jung devoted his life to exploring. He knew that the most powerful transformations occur not through willpower, but through surrender. Not by conquering the shadow, but by integrating it. And now, you are learning that firsthand. You see, the path of individuation is not about becoming better. It's about becoming real, raw, whole. It's not about arriving, it's about remembering. And memory doesn't live in the mind, it lives in the bones, the body, the breath. That is why you feel so much now, why emotions rise without warning, why grief and joy often sit side by side in your chest. This is not emotional instability, this is depth. You are no longer numbed by distraction, you are alive in the fire of truth. And that truth will continue to peel away layers, one by one. With each layer you will mourn. Not just people or places, but versions of yourself that no longer exist. Dreams that no longer matter. Stories that no longer define you. This mourning is sacred. Do not rush it. Do not shame it. Do not try to make it look beautiful. Let it be wild. Let it be messy. Let it undo you. Because only through undoing do you arrive at the unshakable essence beneath it all. You'll notice you no longer react the way you used to. You pause more. You choose differently. You no longer seek revenge or control. You seek peace, not the passive kind, but the fierce, grounded kind that says, I don't need to fight for my worth anymore. That kind of peace cannot be faked. It is earned through fire, through loneliness, through saying yes to the path, even when it made no sense. And now, that peace is beginning to grow roots inside you. You feel it when you say nothing, but everything is understood. When you don't respond to provocation because your energy is too sacred to waste. When you choose your own company because it finally feels like home. You are no longer waiting for someone to save you. You have become the sanctuary you were looking for. And this shift, this irreversible reorientation toward your own truth is the deepest evidence that you've made the right choice. Not because it's easy, not because it's fun, but because it's real. And real is what you came here for. Not applause, not approval, not perfection. You came here for truth, for wholeness, for the unfiltered, unmasked experience of being alive in a world that constantly asks you to hide. And now, you are done hiding. You no longer shrink for comfort. You no longer twist yourself into something digestible. You let yourself be seen not for who you should be, but for who you are. And in doing so, you give others permission to do the same. That is the quiet revolution of the awakened soul. It doesn't force change. It embodies it. It becomes a mirror that reflects what is possible, not through words, but through presence, through the way you move, the way you speak, the way you hold space for contradiction, uncertainty, and pain without running from it. You begin to recognize others who are walking this same path. You see it in their eyes, a quiet knowing, a shared ache, a recognition of truth that doesn't need to be explained. And these people, these fellow travelers, become your soul family. Not always in close proximity, not always in daily contact, but connected nonetheless. Because once you've touched truth, you carry its frequency. And those who are aligned with that frequency will find you effortlessly, unexpectedly, beautifully. These connections are different. They don't drain. They don't demand. They don't distract. They deepen. And still you will face tests. Old patterns will knock on your door dressed in new clothing. The ego will whisper, "Go back. Be small. Stay safe." But now you know better. You've lived the cost of betrayal, not of others, but of yourself. And you will not pay that price again. Not when you've come this far. Not when your soul has already carved a new way through the wilderness. So when the fear comes, welcome it. When the doubt returns, bow to it. Then keep walking. Because the only way through is forward. Not faster, not harder, just forward. There will be days when all you can do is breathe. Let that be enough. There will be moments when the path vanishes beneath your feet. Let that be a reminder to pause, not panic. The soul doesn't follow maps. It follows meaning. It doesn't chase outcomes. It reveals essence. And the essence of who you are is not something you find. It's something you uncover, layer by sacred layer, through every choice to honor what's real over what's easy. You've made that choice again and again, even when no one noticed, even when it cost you everything familiar. And now you are becoming not just a better version of yourself, a truer one, a fuller one who no longer needs to be anything but aligned. That is the work. That is the reward. That is the silent holy fire of transformation, and you are in it now. Keep going. You may not see the change, not in the way the world trains you to expect it. There's no certificate for becoming whole. No applause when you choose truth over comfort. No loud celebration when you walk away from what once defined you, but look deeper. Feel deeper. You will notice it in the way your breath flows easier when you speak the truth. You'll notice it in the way your body no longer tenses when you say no and mean it. In the way your nervous system exhales when you stop pretending. This is real change, not visible to everyone but undeniable to you. This is not a surface shift. This is cellular, soul-deep reorganization. It's not for show, it's for sovereignty. You'll start waking up with a different kind of urgency, not to prove, not to perform, but to protect what's real inside you. You'll begin guarding your energy the way a mother guards her child, fierce, unapologetic. You'll notice that conversations once drenched in performance now leave a bitter taste, that environments once tolerable now feel unbearable. Your soul has outgrown those containers. You're no longer willing to shrink for safety. You are choosing to expand, even if it means outgrowing people, places, and stories that once meant everything. Not because they were wrong, but because you are no longer the version of you that needed them. And this is where grief and grace dance. Where endings meet beginnings, not with fanfare, but with quiet knowing. You'll grieve the past, not to bring it back, but to bless it before you leave it behind. Because you cannot carry everything into your becoming. The load must be light. The hands must be empty. Only then can you receive what was always yours. The soul doesn't cling. It releases. It trusts. And so must you. Trust that the space created by endings is the exact space needed for new life to enter. Trust that the ache isn't emptiness. It's readiness. You begin to understand what Jung meant when he said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." It's not terrifying because it's painful. It's terrifying because it's powerful. Because the moment you stop apologizing for your truth, the world you built around your masks begins to tremble. And what survives is what's real. That kind of power cannot be managed. It can only be surrendered to, and now you're learning to live inside that power humbly, courageously, reverently. You'll start to notice that even your language changes. You speak less to impress and more to connect. You stop over-explaining. You start listening not just to others, but to yourself. You hear your needs, your limits, your longings, and you stop overriding them for the sake of peace that never really was. You understand that peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of alignment, and that alignment sometimes means saying no, walking away, disappointing others. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much to keep abandoning yourself. That is not selfishness. That is sacred responsibility. You are responsible for tending the fire inside you. No one else can do that. And as that fire grows, so does your ability to stand in your truth without burning everything down. You become a lighthouse, not a wildfire. You illuminate without forcing. You guide without controlling. You exist fully, deeply, freely, without demanding anything in return. That's the quiet gift of choosing the soul over the mask. You no longer live to be consumed. You live to be. This is what maturity looks like in the realm of the spirit. Not perfection, not polish, but presence. Emotional sobriety. Sacred discernment, the ability to witness your fear without becoming it. The ability to feel your grief without drowning in it. The ability to notice your anger and let it teach you instead of controlling you. You no longer react from the wound. You respond from the wisdom that the wound gave you. That is what makes you powerful. Not your performance, not your popularity, your presence, your ability to be with what is fully, honestly, gently. There will still be hard days. There will still be moments when you long for the simplicity of old patterns. When you wonder if all this depth is worth it. When you miss the numbness because it was easier than feeling everything. And in those moments, remember numbness is not peace. It's pause. And you didn't come this far to stay paused. You came to feel, to live, to burn clean. And yes, the fire purifies. But it also reveals. And what it reveals is the gold within the part of you untouched by conditioning, unshaken by loss, unbroken by time. That part of you is rising now. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Surely, like the sun behind the clouds, like breath returning after grief, like spring after a long winter. This is the resurrection of the self, not in a moment, but in 1,000 small choices to return to what's true. Again and again. You don't need to be ready. You don't need to know the way. You just need to keep choosing what feels like home in your own soul. You are not late. You are not off path. You are not broken. You are exactly where you're meant to be, in the sacred unraveling that precedes rebirth, in the quiet knowing that emerges after the storm, in the subtle sovereign rhythm of your own becoming. So if you've felt disconnected, lost, strange, hollow, or unseen good, those are signs. Not of failure, of arrival. You've made the right choice. Keep going. You've walked through fires no one saw, held your breath in rooms where your truth wasn't welcome, swallowed your voice to keep the peace only to discover that silence can be more violent than any scream. And now you are reclaiming yourself in ways the world may never understand. Because what they called rebellion was always resurrection. What they labeled too much was your birthright breaking through the seams. You were never lost. You were buried beneath layers of shoulds and shame and survival. And now, piece by sacred piece, you are rising, unapologetically, unedited, and finally, undeniably whole. Carl Jung warned that the path inward is often marked by collapse, not because you are falling apart, but because the false must fall before the truth can rise. And so it did. The plans, the personas, the pleasing, the pretending. One by one they shattered, and though it felt like death, it was actually the labor of your rebirth. And birth is not quiet. It is not graceful. It is blood and breath and trembling. But it is life, real life. The kind that can only be lived when you are finally willing to lose everything that isn't you. You now see that what you once called breakdown was really breakthrough. That the void was not emptiness but potential, that the ache was not an error but a compass, and this knowing lives in you now. You carry it in your spine, in your silence, in the way you no longer chase what costs your peace. You don't need to explain this to anyone. Most won't understand, but the ones who do, they will feel it. They will recognize the depth behind your eyes, the way your presence softens the room without needing to speak. They'll sense the gravity of someone who has walked through their own darkness and emerged not unscarred but sacred. This is what the soul sounds like when it speaks not loud but clear, not demanding but undeniable. And it's speaking to you now. In the way your body leans toward truth, in the way your spirit resists performance, in the way your heart no longer tolerates counterfeit connections. You are done pretending, done negotiating your worth, done molding yourself into shapes that shrink you, because now you know what doesn't honor your soul has no place in your future. The road ahead will still challenge you. The ego doesn't surrender once it surrenders every day. It will offer temptations. It will whisper old fears in a new voice. It will try to convince you that going back is safer than walking into the unknown. But you are no longer seduced by safety. You've seen what it costs. You've felt the dull ache of a life lived for others. And now, even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, you choose truth. You choose alignment. You choose to stand in your light, even if it casts a shadow that makes others uncomfortable. And that shadow, don't run from it. Don't try to erase it. It's part of you. It holds the keys to your power. Jung taught us that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives and we will call it fate. You're making it conscious now. Every time you sit with your discomfort instead of numbing it. Every time you speak your truth instead of swallowing it. Every time you rest instead of performing. That's the work. Not fixing, not perfecting. Integrating. Honoring every part of you, especially the ones you were told to hide. You are not the light without the dark. You are the whole. The tension between. The place where paradox breathes. That's where your magic lives. In the refusal to simplify yourself for the comfort of others. In the courage to hold both grief and gratitude, rage and tenderness, brokenness and beauty, and call it all holy, because it is. You are. And maybe now, as you hear these words, you're realizing that all the things that once felt like detours, the heartbreaks, the losses, the endings were never obstacles, they were invitations. Every collapse was a clearing, every ache a recalibration, every silence a space where your soul could finally speak. And now that it's speaking, now that it's guiding you, you don't need the whole map, you just need to trust the next step, the quiet pull. The invisible thread that keeps tugging you toward more truth, more depth, more life. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be aligned with yourself. To live a life so honest it becomes medicine. Not just for you, but for those still afraid to come home to themselves. And you won't need to preach. You won't need to prove. Your presence will do the work. Because presence, real, raw, rooted presence, is the most powerful transmission of all. It says, I made it through the fire. And you can too. So, if you feel like giving up, don't. If you feel like nothing is working, wait. If you feel like you're losing everything, look again. What's being lost was never really yours. What's being stripped away was never built on truth. And what's left, what remains after the burning, is what can never be taken. Your essence, your soul, your becoming. And this becoming doesn't end. It deepens. Every season brings another layer. Every breath, another chance to choose truth over illusion. Every moment, another invitation to return to what is real. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late. You are right on time, right on track, and right on purpose. Because you made the bravest choice a person can make to stop performing and start becoming. So if you've been asking for a sign, this is it. Keep going. Do you ever feel like you are watching a play where everyone knows their lines except you, or perhaps you know the lines too well, and you realize that everyone else is just acting? There is a profound isolation that comes not from being alone, but from being awake in a world that prefers to sleep. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who mapped the deepest corners of the human psyche, didn't just study the mind. He lived through the terrifying, beautiful chaos of a truly unique personality. He argued that true uniqueness isn't just about being rare or introverted. It is a specific psychological constitution, a terrifying burden, and a magnificent gift. If you have ever felt that your rarity goes beyond the standard personality tests, if you feel an ancient weight in your soul that your peers cannot understand, you might possess what Jung called a personality on the path of individuation. This is not for the faint of heart. Most people are happy to remain a drop in the ocean. But you might be the ocean in a drop. Here are the signs that your personality is not just rare, but structurally unique in a way that separates you from the 99%. The first sign is what Jung described as the burden of the amphibian. You live in two worlds simultaneously. Most people operate strictly in the conscious realm. They worry about Bill's social status, the news, and the tangible reality in front of them. Their internal monologue is a reflection of the external world. But for you, the barrier between the conscious and the unconscious is thinner. You walk down a busy street and you don't just see people, you feel the undercurrents of their emotions. You sense the collective atmosphere of a room before a word is spoken. Jung wrote about this extensively in his memoirs. He spoke of having a number one personality, the schoolboy, the son, the professional, and a number two personality, which felt timeless, ancient, and connected to something far larger than himself. If you possess this trait, you often feel a sense of derealization, not because you are crazy, but because reality feels too small for what you are perceiving. You might find yourself zoning out in the middle of a party, not out of boredom, but because a sudden insight, a symbol or a feeling from the other side has grabbed your attention. You are amphibious. You can breathe on land in the material world, but you can also breathe underwater in the deep unconscious. This makes you feel alien to others, who only have lungs for the land. They look at you and see someone distant or aloof. They don't realize you are just listening to a frequency they cannot hear. This leads us directly into the second sign, which is the inability to lie to yourself. This sounds like a virtue, and it is, but it is also a curse that isolates you. Society functions on necessary illusions. We call them personas. As Jung noted, the persona is the mask we wear to interact with the world. It is the smiling employee, the polite neighbor, the dutiful citizen. For the majority of the population, the mask is the face. They believe they are their job titles. They believe they are their social roles. But you see the mask in the mirror, and you know it's a prop. You have a terrifying level of self-awareness that dismantles your own illusions. When you try to conform, when you try to just fit in and play the game, you feel a physical sickness, a visceral reaction. Your soul rejects the lie. This makes standard social interactions exhausting for you. You aren't tired because you are antisocial. You are tired because you are forced to perform in a play you no longer believe in. You crave authenticity with a hunger that scares people. You want to talk about death, about the origin of fear, about the meaning of coincidences, while everyone else is discussing the weather. This inability to maintain a shallow persona makes you rare, even among other rare personalities. While others are proud of their unique style or brand, you're busy trying to strip away all branding to find what is real underneath. This brings a distinct kind of loneliness, but also a distinct kind of power. It creates a vacuum around you. People who are fake cannot survive in your presence for long. They either leave or they are forced to become real. You act as a mirror, reflecting their own hidden depths back at them often without saying a word. This is why you might find that people either love you intensely or dislike you for no apparent reason. You trigger their own unconscious simply by existing. The third sign is a relationship with the shadow that is fundamentally different from the norm. Jung famously said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Most people spend their entire lives running from their shadow, the repressed, darker, shameful, or primitive parts of themselves. They project this evil onto others. They say, he is the bad guy, she is the problem, the world is unfair. They are the eternal victims because they refuse to look inside. You are different. You have likely gone through a period in your life, perhaps a dark night of the soul, where you were forced to confront your own capacity for malevolence, your own selfishness, your own rage. You don't run from these thoughts anymore. You invite them to tea. You analyze them. You understand that your capacity for darkness is exactly what gives you the strength for true light. Because you are not afraid of your own darkness, you are not afraid of the darkness in others. This makes you the person people call when their lives are falling apart. You become the confessor. Friends or even strangers tell you their deepest secrets, their worst mistakes, things they wouldn't tell a priest or a therapist. Why? Because they sense that you won't judge them. You have already seen the abyss in yourself. This ability to hold space for darkness is incredibly rare. It is the mark of a healer, a shaman, or a true philosopher. But it comes at a cost. You absorb. You feel the weight of the collective pain. Sometimes you wake up feeling heavy, sad, or anxious, and you realize it isn't even your emotion, it's the residue of the world around you. You are a psychological filter for your environment. This intensity often leads to the fourth sign, which is an obsession with meaning over happiness. In modern society, happiness is sold as the ultimate goal. Buy this, achieve that, and you will be happy. But for a personality structure like yours, happiness is too cheap. It's fleeting. You don't want to be happy. You want to be whole. You are driven by what Jung called the teleological drive, the idea that your life is being pulled forward by a future purpose, not just pushed by past causes. You look at your life not as a series of random events, but as a story being written. When something bad happens, a breakup, a job loss, a failure, you don't just ask, why me? You ask, what does this demand of me? Where is this guiding me? You see symbols in your daily life, a chance encounter, a book falling off a shelf, a dream that feels too real. These aren't coincidences to you, they are synchronicity. You navigate life by reading these signs, trusting an internal compass that often contradicts logic. While others are planning their lives using spreadsheets and 5-year plans, you are listening to the wind, waiting for the intuitive click that tells you it's time to move. This drive for meaning over happiness leads you to a crossroads that few dare to cross. It brings us to a point in your life where you realize that the map society gave you, go to school, get a job, get married, retire, is not just wrong for you. It is a cage. And realizing this brings you to the fifth and perhaps most painful sign of a truly Jungian, unique personality, the era of the sacred hermit, sacred. You have likely experienced phases in your life of voluntary, intense isolation. This is not the isolation of a victim who has been rejected by the world. This is the isolation of a wolf that leaves the pack to ascend the mountain. Carl Jung himself built a stone tower in Bollingen by the lake where he lived without electricity or running water for months. He didn't do this because he hated people. He did it because the noise of the collective consciousness was too loud for him to hear his own soul. If you possess this rare personality structure, you know exactly what this feels like. You go through periods where you simply vanish. You stop answering texts, you decline invitations, you retreat into your books, your art, your work, or simply into silence. To your friends and family, this looks like depression or withdrawal. They worry about you. They try to fix you. They pull you to parties telling you to live a little. But they don't understand that you are not dying. You are molting. You are shedding a skin that has become too tight. During these hermit phases, you are doing the heavy lifting of the psyche. You are processing not just your own trauma, but the trauma of your lineage, the questions of existence. You are building your own internal tower at Bollingen. This need for solitude is a biological imperative for you. Without it, you feel fragmented. You realize that your energy is a finite resource, and most social interactions are transactions where you lose currency. So you hoard your energy not out of greed, but out of necessity to fuel the massive internal transformation taking place. You are learning to be alone without being lonely, a distinction that 99% of the world never masters. And this brings me to a pause. If you have made it this far into the video, if you are nodding your head because you have felt the guilt of this isolation, then you are exactly who I am speaking to. Most people would have clicked away by now looking for a quick dopamine hit or a funny cat video. But you are still here searching for depth. That is a sign in itself. We are building a community here of the 1% who are willing to look into the abyss and grow from it. If you want to continue this journey of self-discovery and not walk this path alone, consider subscribing to the channel. It's a small signal to the algorithm, but a massive signal to yourself that you are prioritizing your inner world. Join us. Now, as you emerge from your tower, you bring back something that constitutes the sixth sign, the burden of prophetic intuition. Jung spoke of the intuitive type, those who do not look at things as they are, but as they will be. But for your specific rare personality, this goes beyond simple guessing. You have a pattern recognition engine in your brain that borders on precognition. You see the seeds of destruction in a system while everyone else is celebrating its success. You see the inevitable breakup of a couple while they are still in their honeymoon phase. You sense the shift in the cultural wind years before it hits the mainstream news. This is often called the Cassandra complex, the curse of seeing the future but having no one believe you. You find yourself constantly waiting for the world to catch up to you. You might say something to a friend, a warning or an observation, and they look at you like you're crazy. Then, 2 years later, it happens exactly as you said. They come back to you amazed, asking, "How did you know?" You didn't know in the factual sense. You perceived. You saw the archetypal pattern. You understand that human behavior moves in cycles, just like nature. While others are distracted by the surface waves, you are watching the currents deep below. This makes you incredible at strategy, at creative endeavors, and at understanding human psychology. But it also makes you feel perpetually out of sync with time. You are living in 2030, while everyone else is arguing about 2024. This temporal displacement creates a unique friction. You have little patience for small talk because small talk is always about the now, the weather, the game, the celebrity gossip. Your mind is already processing the implications of these things 5 steps down the line. You want to talk about consequences, about origins, about destiny. This makes you a difficult employee in rigid corporate structures, which value compliance over vision. You are the one in the meeting asking, "But why are we doing this? And where does this lead in 10 years? You are the disruptor, not because you want to be difficult, but because you cannot turn off your vision. However, this intuition comes with a dangerous trap, the inflation of the ego. Because you see things others don't. It is easy to fall into arrogance, to think you are better, smarter, or more evolved. Jung warned about this constantly. He called it godlikeness. When you touch the deep unconscious, when you access this ancient wisdom, you can mistake the wisdom for your own. You can start to believe you are the guru. But the truly rare personality, the one that actually achieves individuation, catches this trap. You realize that you are not the source of the wisdom. You are just the vessel. You are the radio, not the broadcast. This humility is the subtle difference between a narcissist and a sage. A narcissist says, "I know the truth." You say, "I have seen a truth, and it terrifies me." This leads to a profound restructuring of your values, bringing us to the edge of the 7th sign. It involves a concept Jung called the coincidentia oppositorum, the union of opposites. Most people live in a binary world. Good versus evil, right versus wrong, male versus female, logic versus emotion. They pick a side and defend it to the death. They identify as logical people and reject their emotions, or they identify as empaths and reject logic. They are half people living half lives. You, however, have lost the ability to see the world in black and white. You have entered the gray. You have begun to integrate your anima if you are male or your animus if you are female. You have realized that the capacity for great good requires the capacity for great evil. You have realized that to be truly kind, you must first be capable of aggression and then choose to sheath your sword. A harmless person is not good. They are just helpless. A dangerous person who keeps their monster under control, that is, a good person. This ability to hold two contradictory ideas in your head at the same time without going crazy is the hallmark of high-level psychological development. You can love someone and hate them in the same breath, and you understand that both feelings are true. You can see the beauty in death and the tragedy in birth. You are becoming what the alchemists called the rebis, the two-headed being the reconciliation of spirit and matter. But living in the gray is lonely. People want you to pick a side. They want you to be on their team. When you refuse, when you say, well, both sides have a point, you are often attacked by both. You become a psychological outlaw. You don't fit into the neat boxes of political parties, religious denominations, or social cliques. You are a fluid element in a rigid world. This capacity to hold paradoxes prepares you for the final and most mystical sign. It is the sign that confirms you have not just looked into the unconscious, but that the unconscious has looked back at you. It is the experience of the numinous. The seventh and final sign is the experience of the numinous. This is a word Jung borrowed from Rudolf Otto to describe the feeling of being in the presence of a mystery that is both terrifying and fascinating. For the average person, religion is a set of rules, a social club, or a tradition they inherited from their parents. They go to church, temple, or mosque because it is what one does. But for you, you don't have a religion, you have a religious attitude. You may be an atheist, an agnostic, or a believer, but that label doesn't matter. What matters is that you have had direct personal experiences with the other. You have had dreams that were so profound, they changed the course of your life. You have felt a presence in nature that brought you to your knees. You have experienced moments where the barrier between you and the universe dissolved, and you understood for a split second the architecture of everything. Jung said, "I don't believe I know." He wasn't talking about arrogance. He was talking about experience. If you possess this rare personality, you cannot be satisfied with blind faith. You need to touch the flame yourself. This is the sign that the self with a capital S is demanding to be known. The self is the organizing principle of the psyche, the God image within you. While the ego wants safety, comfort, and social approval, the self wants only one thing: wholeness. And here lies the crux of your struggle and the answer to why you feel so unique and yet so isolated. The self does not care if you are happy. The self does not care if you are rich. The self cares that you become who you are meant to be, even if it burns your old life to the ground. This is the process of individuation. It is the psychological equivalent of medieval alchemy. You are the base metal lead, heavy, dull, and poisonous. The depression, the anxiety, the isolation you feel. That is the fire. It is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to turn you into gold. Most people run from the fire. They numb themselves with distractions. But you have stayed in the fire. You are still watching this video, which proves you are willing to endure the heat to find the meaning. This brings us to the ultimate realization. You are not wrong. You are not broken. You are under construction. The Japanese have an art form called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold lacquer. The result is a piece that is more beautiful and valuable than the original because of its scars. Your personality is a kintsugi vessel. The cracks in your psyche, the trauma, the shadow, the doubts are not flaws. They are exactly where the light enters. They are the space where the gold is applied. Society tries to mass-produce flawless, identical plastic cups. You are a handcrafted ceramic bowl that has been shattered and put back together with gold. Of course you don't fit in. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out, to hold a different kind of substance. So what do you do with this realization? First, stop apologizing for your intensity. Stop trying to shrink yourself to fit into places that are too small for you. When you try to be normal, you are robbing the world of your unique contribution. The world has enough normal people. It has enough people who follow the rules and sleepwalk through life. What the world lacks, what it is desperate for, is people who are awake. Second, accept the responsibility of your vision. If you see the future, if you see the patterns, it is your duty to articulate them. Write the book, paint the picture, start the business, have the difficult conversation. Your intuition is not a parlor trick. It is a survival mechanism for the tribe. In ancient times, the person with your personality sat at the edge of the village watching the horizon for predators while the others slept by the fire. You are the watchman. It is a lonely job, yes, but the safety of the village depends on you staying awake. Finally, understand that the goal is not perfection. The goal is completeness. Jung famously said, "I'd rather be whole than good." To be whole is to accept your shadow, your amphibian nature, your need for solitude, and your terrifying potential. It is to look in the mirror and say, "I am all of this." The journey we have described today is not easy. It is the hero's journey, and the hero always has to leave home, face the dragon, and bleed before they can return. You might feel like you are still in the belly of the whale, surrounded by darkness, but remember this. The seed must be buried in the darkness of the soil before it can break open and reach for the sun. Your feeling of being an outsider is the evidence of your seed coat breaking. It hurts. It is terrifying, but it is the only way you grow. You are not alone in this. There are others like you, the alchemists, the hermits, the dreamers scattered across the world, doing the same work, fighting the same silent battles. We are a secret society of the soul, connected not by meetings or badges, but by a shared understanding of the deep waters. So I have one question left for you, and I want you to answer it honestly in the comments below. Which of these signs resonates with you the most, and are you brave enough to stop hiding it? Your story might be the exact key that unlocks someone else's prison. Don't keep it to yourself. Leave your comments, subscribe if you are ready to continue the work, and remember, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. I'll see you in the next video.